Hello everyone, BackupMonster here. So we have a next Backup Monster show episode, and this time we have quite a good subject, I guess. We'll talk about the cloud native infrastructure and the cloud itself, the innovation in the cloud, and the subject is the OpenStack Reimagined. So my guest today is Yuri Shyyan. Hello Yuri,
Hello, hello.
how is it going?
It's early.
It's early. No. It's not early in Poland. We have a
Yeah,
3 p.m. What time you have right now?
9. Right on
9.
time.
It's not bad. Not bad. Not bad. Um do you have any sunny? Because in a Central Europe, we for the last few weeks we have all the time. It's raining, cloudy, and this cloud is good because we have it today. The subject is a cloud, but we don't have a sun at all. How is it in Canada?
Well, it's not Canada. I live in the eastern part of the United States.
Hmm.
It's cold.
It's cold.
It's cold in the it's cold in the mornings,
It's
but
cold in the morning.
we only get snow every other year or so. So no snow yet.
No snow yet. Yeah.
That makes
Okay.
it cool.
Could you just start and tell a few words about yourself? Because I just started that we will talk a lot massively about the OpenStack and about the open metal. So, what's your role and the story behind the company? So, feel free to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Yuri Shyyan. I'm the director of cloud systems architecture at Open Metal. I was one of the original engineers who developed the kind of private cloud on demand platform. And I kind of help people understand the value of our platform and just all technologies in general, mainly coming from an open source background. So, open source means a lot to me.
Always with the open source.
Always with the open source.
Oh, always really open source. Okay, okay. So because there is right now we have good and bad times because there is again a good times for the open source. I mean bad times because there's a lots of massive rumors and the messages regarding the acquisition of the VMware, etc. And I know that I spoke with the many of the folks from the managed service providers through the cloud providers or the customers itself, and many of them they looking for some alternative. uh, and I would like you to position in a short how you see the open stack after years of growing. Could you tell a little bit, especially connecting to this VMware acquisition? What's going on, and do you think that is a proper time to think about the OpenStack itself?
Well, I think it's always time to think about OpenStack,
So we
whether
didn't we
acquisitions
didn't need to
happen.
wait for the Broadcom acquisition, yeah,
Yeah,
correct?
no, it's going to obviously push a lot of people to look at alternatives, but from from my position is that most people that are utilizing any kind of cloud infrastructure in their head, or at least the mantra so far has been kind of the big three, and then you run whatever hypervisor platform within the big three. Obviously, a lot of on-premise people use VMware, so that's going to be interesting. um, but ultimately, I think the way I would want to position OpenStack is it's the most open source developed cloud infrastructure project in the world. It's got thousands of contributors, and its entire goal is to build cloud infrastructure. And so when people think about providers for that, they typically just think of the big three. But there's always been a fourth player. It's just right now OpenStack is becoming more and more prominent. More and more cores are being leveraged through OpenStack.
Mhm.
And, you know, my goal today, at least, is to position it so that when people are making their decisions or are looking for some kind of alternative, that OpenStack is one of them.
I'm just writing the comments from where the people are watching us. So it's important from which direction, so which part of the world they're watching the live. uh so first, when you have somebody that, but tell me, Yuri, about what is actually the OpenStack for you, from the technical perspective, from the technology perspective, but also from the business values, because I will go and deep dive into the history of open metal. So this is the prerequisites, yes, that I needed. Uh, your thoughts, your personally, what do you think about the technology and the business perspective?
I've met some people that 10 years ago tried OpenStack and it was just not ready for the market. And I think now it's gotten developed to the point where it's competitive with whatever you're seeing out there virtualization wise. Um, the goal of OpenStack, or the technology behind it, is to be modular. And so whether you're plugging into different types of hypervisors, whether it's KVM, VMware, uh, any others, OpenStack is supposed to say, okay, you can use me to manage this resource. And same goes for any type of storage, whether it's LVM or Ceph or some kind of other network mounted storage, there is a driver for it. So the idea behind OpenStack is run your own cloud however you want it.
But but from one, I know that many people say, okay, but we have too many possibilities in the OpenStack, so it can be a huge advantage. But this is also some cons behind it, because how to do it in a proper way, yes, because there are too many paths that we could go with, and we know that each OpenStack implementation may be vary,
Yeah, that's probably the challenge. Actually, it's like Tetris with spheres. So there is a complexity to it. Like you can't just. I think that was part of like what we decided to focus on, is figuring out, okay, what is the configuration of OpenStack that can be 1,000 different ways for sure, that's going to fit the most common use cases and reach kind of the top of the performance that people are looking for. So yeah, unfortunately, when you try to make something modular, you're going to go down a path of trying to create a module for everything, and so that's going to leave people a little confused and uncertain. But at this point, I think there is a pretty core configuration, at least that we've come up with, that's facilitating 80% of the use cases in the world.
Mm-hmm. And I know, when we spoke on open infra, and what we noticed, after the more than 10 years of the community, the easy of use and the proper use cases, like you said, some, ready on use cases are, typical, or one man show can do all of the installation and the configuration. Before that was a quite challenging. I remember that times. Frankly, when I 5-6 years ago watched the OpenStack, I was a little bit afraid before we started doing a backing up and protecting the OpenStack, that said, okay, it's too much, it's too complicated, it will go down. That was my first impression when I started the deep dive into the OpenStack world. What I've seen, it's doing the opposite. If you have a proper people, the understanding of the technology, you can do many things that are not applied to the other solutions. That's why I started from the Broadcom and a VMware, because the worst case is that this is some action that I don't like, just changing the pricing, etc., and says to all of the managed service providers, it's your problem, yes.
I don't
So I
think
know
anybody
that,
likes pricing increases.
yeah, nobody likes, but I think many people would like to be at least mm, get some warnings, not situation where they are just standing, and they don't have a choice. Uh, so you are still believing that after years and you are promoting the open source, that still the OpenStack is a real alternative. But what I noticed on the last open infra, the OpenStack community started to talk about the virtualization engine. And I know that years ago nobody said that the OpenStack is not the virtualization. It's something bigger, it's something more. But right now I noticed that this communication path was changed. I don't know if it's only the marketing, because the technology itself didn't change at all. So what's your thoughts here?
Okay, I've got this really different understanding of technology because I am an engineer. There is no magic. Like
Hmm.
this is the most important thing that I wish people understood, especially those that are not very educated in the tech sector that are making technical decisions. There is no magic. There is no serverless. There's an engineer who figured out how to do something and then we branded it as something else. And so virtualization in itself isn't magic. It's code. It runs in a certain way. And most of these platforms at the end produce something that you use, which is a virtual machine. How you get the virtual machine doesn't actually matter too much because you're a consumer of the virtual machine. So whether it's VMware or KVM or ESXi or something like that, they all produce the same thing in the end. And knowing that there is no magic probably demystifies a lot of questions that other people may have, like how will this work? The same. It works like you said. Sure, I think the marketing change. I think there's a lot of things that are happening around automation and ease of use, and that's healthy for everybody. But let me kind of flip it back to VMware, or at least kind of how I've been thinking about this process. What was the first VM that you ran? Like, do you remember the first time you ran a virtual machine? What did you
Uh,
use?
AIX.
AIX? Okay, all right.
Okay, it's not typical, but yeah, I used to work in IBM, and so I have
Okay,
a
all right.
I have a plenty of the P series machines, and then we realized how what was the beauty behind the scenes. Then the VMware came
Uh-huh. It sure
into
did.
the production. Yeah.
But why did it come? And so like if I think about it, at least people in my generation, their first introduction to virtualization was the home computer, right? So it was so cool to run a computer inside of a computer. So VMware kind of utilized Windows and all that to build their virtualization platform. They had a leg up on the market for like 10 years. So in essence, why there's so many people, especially in the MSP space, so comfortable is, you know, Windows virtualization, which VMware did fairly well, kind of became the de facto path to being able to do a lot of things. And so a lot of companies started running Windows at the office, and eventually that trickled down to the cloud world. But that's why VMware is so prominent. And then later on, when AWS started, playing with virtualization, all of a sudden you realize that the UI component, which VMware is hands down one of the best, right? You realize that the UI component isn't that important in the game of efficiency and running servers and doing all these things. And so now I feel like the Broadcom acquisition is probably to try to catch up to the market in terms of virtualization. Um, I know a lot of people still use it, but they're behind on a lot of functionality that I would say is on every DevOps resume requirement list. So
This is this quite controversy because when you speak with the VMware guy and you said Broadcom need to catch up, so
yeah,
what are yeah, and they said, well, what are you trying to tell me that what we need to catch up? Yes, in which space we need to catch up. So because in most cases when I speak with the VMware folks, this when you said about this education path and the VMware workstation, I just remind, during a study, everybody has a CNA, did a Cisco path. Everybody has a Microsoft. I came
Ah,
after my study and I said, okay, I need to do the Windows part because I have a certificate and I did it for quite a good money. And I need to do the Cisco. The network equals Cisco. And I know
yep,
how it works and how this, the entry level education gives you the leverage to build, not only the awareness, but the people, they don't like a change. So if they already learned something, they would like to, stick with it. So that's why your story, it's fully for me is complementary. I started to use it on desktop. It's natural scenario plus good UI. Let's go for it. And I
That's
thought
it. Yeah.
that no, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, you know, the VMware certification was a sexy party. I'm doing the VMware stuff. Yeah, okay, you're doing the VMware, and
You're a virtualization expert.
yeah, yeah, virtualization. So there was a lots of bars, etc. And I, remember even how the one of my biggest, of course, competition and one of the key vendors on the market, Veeam, they started only on the VMware, and they said we are number one in VMware. And I said, no, it's a bullshit. It will not click. It's not possible. I remember the first 2 or 3 years of the Vim, but the
Mhm.
strength and the growing of the virtualization was so massive that
Yeah.
to build in the awareness that we are number one, even if they didn't, makes them go into the much more higher level. And when you're comparing, for example, Vim from the 10 years behind. So this first education and building the awareness is a key, and it's, to be honest, it's the one of the most expensive part when we build in the companies, yeah, like Open Metal, Stower, building in the minds that there is such a company. This is the first goal, yeah, to achieve, that
Mhm.
somebody will recognize you. Then
Yep.
things about your specialization. So tricky and a good position. For the next startup, I need to consider such a strategy.
Yeah.
But
OpenStack. Start an OpenStack company.
yeah, but
But
I
let
started
me
with the
let me
small
bring that
question,
back a
and my
little bit.
digression is like 5 minutes. Let's come back to this VMware guy. Okay, where we need to catch up. Yuri, what are you
Yeah.
talking about?
Well, I'm not a VMware expert, but I've used VMware in the past, just like you have, and I understand kind of the barriers to like infrastructure as code automation and CI/CD path lines. So that's probably something for them to focus on and kind of have a more cloud native approach. The thing is, though, where this brings me is, why does open source exist? Well, probably the same reason why monopolies are really good for business, but they're not that great when it comes to price. Because, well, if you're the one controlling a specific function, you're not. There are two things that happen. First, you get to set the price, and if people have to use you for their needs, well, you can be pretty uh, inflexible about that. The other part is that type of monopolization kind of locks in innovation. Like, what is the core benefit of improving your stack if you're the only player in the game? And so I think partly this acquisition for VMware is, and maybe they saw some losses, and they're like, okay, the market, who's not we're not a monopoly in the space, and the market is obviously doing really good. It's $1 trillion market, um, and we want a bigger slice of it. Where do we need to improve? So that's probably their take of it. I can't speak to all the business decisions there, um, but that's how I see open source. Open source says, hey, you've got something cool. I really wait, how much? And all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I think I'm going to try to figure this out. So, Linux probably came out to be because they were like, oh, the personal computer is really cool. But Microsoft
Y-
licensed it and you had to pay for it.
when I started to really believe in the OpenStack, when the customer they build it on top of the VMware stack, everybody knows that ESXi works well. So I'm saying, okay, it's stable, it works. You know what you have behind the scenes, so it's obvious. But then it started when they came with the vRealize, so build in the cloud, uh, and I saw on a production what's going on and how much effort and money in the end you need to make to make it happen. NS6 licenses and incredible numbers of the new features that are good, but you need to pay extra. And then I, saw the OpenStack. I also then started to work with the Red Hat Cloud Forms, which was also the good product. Right now, they got rid of from the offering, unfortunately, after the IBM acquisition. Let's do not go and to comment more here.
Okay.
But then I realized that we don't need to spend, millions of pennies. And after this V realize was actually rewritten into the new code, new version, I saw years ago that was, they need to come back, 3-4 steps back, because it wasn't, it wasn't work as it's supposed to work, and it still cost the same amount of the money or even more. And then I said, okay, there is a space, but so this is the space. This space is for the long, term. What I noticed, but still, the majority, like the monopoly, like 80%, 85%, is still on the VMware. And I'm just curious how how nowadays scenarios situation will actually change the way how the new businesses or the new projects will go. So I'm optimistic that we will see more and more OpenStack implementation. This is my personal opinion.
There is economic pressure. So, like, if the license cost is going to go up, that means you're going to have to probably raise the cost of your products, which is going to make you less competitive um, price wise. So, there's going to be economic pressure for you to seek an alternative. And that's probably true for the majority of players in this space, not just VMware, to be honest. I think that's the path. Uh, the other portion of it really is, if everybody's using the same thing, it doesn't make anybody special. So the reality is, how do you stand out or innovate? And obviously, by raising prices, you're not going to be doing that. Uh, so I do think there's going to be a lot of people seeking alternatives. I think a lot of people will flee to the cloud. And I just want people to be aware that amongst the big three, which are probably going to be on the decision table, whether you like it or not, they need to be aware of the fourth. And the fourth entails your own something. It is your own infrastructure, your own cloud,
Mhm.
your own, be it OpenStack or not. Obviously, I'm a proponent of open source, and I do think that OpenStack is probably the best player in as an alternative fourth. Um, but they're going to be seeking out these options.
And you mentioned also about they have the most and the most beautiful UI, and I know still that plenty of the admin specialists they buying by by the nice story and look and feel user experience. From the opposite way, we spoke before our session last week, and you realized me that the world is changing right now. We see more and more coming back to the CLI path, to API approach architecture,
Mhm.
and see what's going on with the Kubernetes. You have an orchestration, but in most cases the people working came back to the CLI part. How you see it? Because
Um,
still most majority they look for something easy of use.
Flashy.
The best option is to do not touch it. Yes.
Uh, well, there's two different approaches to this. The first one is you tackle the UI portion. Being that OpenStack is modular, there is a lot of companies already that are like, okay, well, we see OpenStack starting to take over some more and more of the world's workloads. Okay, we want to make this prettier than the default. And so there is a lot of companies like OZ, Fleo, Uniview, Computing Stack. Uh, their literal goal is to create an optimal UI for the user experience. Again, OpenStack is API first, and so the default UI that you get with OpenStack Horizon just uses APIs underneath. Back in the
Hmm.
day that you're referring to, we used to have to go and say, okay, I need to create one VM. It needs to be this. It needs to be this storage. I got to pre-create the drive. I have to set up the networking ports and everything. All of that stuff is now automated. UI makes it obviously better. But in the world of development, in the world of DevOps and engineering, most people who are utilizing the actual VMs, they don't even like the UI. Their approach is I don't need to log in anywhere. Just let me run things from my shell, right? And a big part of it has been the uh, mobilization of like the CI/CD. Like CI/CD is probably prevalent in most cloud native companies now. You want to push out code, and then some automation checks the code, makes sure it's sane, that there's no issues, and then based on that code, runs that CLI automation, be it Ansible or Terraform or some kind of infrastructure as code language. And then it reaches out to the cloud provider, whether it's OpenStack or AWS or GCP or somebody else, and then creates all of these infrastructure resources. In fact, that's how auto scaling, again, remember, there is no magic. That's how auto scaling works. It takes metrics, it says, okay, you're a little overloaded here, let's spin up an additional VM, and it uses API stuff underneath. And like that's the important part. So I don't personally care if you use the UI, as long as the UI fits your needs. And there are players in this field that are making that experience better.
Mm-hmm. And I remember when I read, I was looking when we started the store in 2014, so it was 2000, I guess, 17. I was looking for some, proof in which direction to go from the numbers of the hypervisor worldwide, and I found that the Gartner said in 2016 there was a last magic quadrant for the virtualization platform. And the Gartner said because there is no sense to compare it because they are so similar, and the virtualization is actually the commodity. So the customers should look for the upper layers of the automation, private cloud, and cloud integration. And then I realized, okay, gosh, it's happening. Uh, but we are after 7 years from that I read this Gartner, and still my personal opinion is that not yet, maybe it will happen in the next years, they not treated the virtualization as a commodity. We are not so concentrating on the upper layers. Already Nutanix proved it, yes? We have a KVM behind the scenes, is Acropolis, OpenStack. Concentrate on the different layers because the KVM is so stable that you don't need
Exactly.
to, think about it. Like you said, it's running, it's not magic. Think about what kind of the, additional business value and technology value you can bring from these upper layers. So I just want to emphasize that it's not something that started from yesterday or the few months ago, but many also I read some materials that most of the right now virtualization engines right now will be replaceable into the congested virtualization and the containerization platforms. This is also tricky. I'm not believing in these numbers. They're saying that 65% of the workloads will be mixed, congested between or VM will be nested into the container. It's a tricky. I know that many vendors trying to make it happen. We'll see. But this message that virtualization is a commodity and look for something more, it's I think it's a good message for today's session. Not only, but look for this additional value. But this is a
Yeah.
great place to speak about the open metal itself, because you as a company decided to use the OpenStack as the engine, but you also have different approach than the typical cloud providers. If you could right now spend a few minutes and
Yeah.
tell what is the vision of the open metal, because I'm guess many customers or partners who, asking you this
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Okay. So our approach, we're an infrastructure as a service company first. So OpenStack just happened to be a need in the market that we tackled first. But our approach is people are seeking kind of the highly available environments for whatever it is that they're running, be it OpenStack or some other clustered type of technology. So our environment is our data center is set up so that you have redundancy across every possible field. So at the network level, switch level, top of the racks, server ports, power supplies, and all of that. So our goal is we can drop in bare metal into a private environment, a private network, and then do whatever you want to do with it. Whether it's compute nodes, storage nodes, GPU nodes, that part doesn't matter. And so because we've seen this, like the public cloud costs are kind of ridiculous. I've seen, and the billing systems for them are ridiculous too. I've seen bills that are like 883 line items. You need to hire somebody just to read that type of bill. And so the idea is you kind of get that bare metal service, at least on the billing side. You're just paying for the server, and then you can install whatever you want on it. And so we deploy OpenStack and Ceph in a highly available format. So you kind of start out with your own cloud, which can do 80% of what most public clouds can do. And we're focused on mainly the complex ecosystems of technology. So obviously running your own cloud is a complex thing. Clustered services like Ceph, storage, that you're probably very
So the message
aware of.
is build, redesign your on-prem first.
Do your own. Do your own.
Do your
Because
own.
and here's the other part of like open source is that I understand that like the cloud model has tried to make it easier for people to use their systems. But during the last decade or 15 years, what do you think the open source side has been doing? They've been making things more automated, more dependable, faster to deploy. Like Ansible didn't exist a long time ago. Now you can deploy and configure any service with Ansible in a code fashion, right? And so there is a lot of automation that are making your life easier happening that people are no longer looking at because all they see is VMware in front of them or Google Cloud or something like that. And so OpenStack, we do see really, really a great value for people kind of running their own cloud and running their workloads. The other aspect of this, and this is like weird through a story, we had a client come from Azure. You would think Azure runs Windows. They know everything that they need about this specific thing. And we were talking, so that they're running Windows on KVM through OpenStack. And they're like, our 4-core VMs actually feel like 4 cores. And then you think about that and you realize, oh, that's right. The business model of most cloud providers is density. That's how they're making all the money. Fit as many possible users on a physical server to extract as much value from it. When you do your own, when you own your own cloud, nobody else is using those resources. So you get the dedicated experience. You control the density and therefore the economics behind your spend. And the other part is in order to try anything anywhere, you have this cost. You were talking about this earlier, where to make a decision, you have to figure out what it's going to cost you. That's now testing. Like you want to be an innovative company, you have an upfront consideration for spend. Like, oh, shall we run a newer Kubernetes cluster? Shall we try this software? Oh, well, we're going to have to power on this many hours of this instance. When you own your own cloud, all of that has no cost.
So from one side, you're saying yes, the cloud, but you're more promoting the building your own cloud on-prem. What about this the hybrid approach? Do you have the option in Open Metal to combine it, or just focus on
I'm not
prem?
pushing on prem. I think the way I've seen things modify is that you used to have things on prem. Like if you want to do it right, do it yourself type of thing. The thing is, you need the environment. So you want the connectivity of data center speeds. So you want at minimum co-location somewhere where you're a jump away from Europe or a jump away from South America. You want to be a global international service. So you want to be positioned within a data center. And you want the redundancy and the uplink speeds at data center levels.
Mhm.
So you want multi-gigabit speeds if you so choose. But
What about what about the admin and management part? You taking the responsibility in this kind of or just deploying and makes all of these layers managed by you. So what is the value here?
so there's probably a tipping point for every company in regards to how much financial pain things are causing them. So, for example, if you just need a couple of VMs, running your own cloud is probably cost inefficient. That's just the reality. You should go and probably start out at a cloud provider, whether it's a public cloud or some OpenStack cloud provider, and start and develop your product and service there. But once you're at scale, and we've seen crazy bills like, I don't know, 500K a month on cloud spend, and that's not a big bill in the cloud industry. That's crazy to me. And
It's a
so
6 million yearly, so it's not a
yeah,
small
just a little
amount.
bit, right? And so when they're doing that and they're paying for every Kubernetes cluster that they're running, it adds up very quickly. So you can very quickly find yourself locked into, I don't know, Lambda or some kind of product, which is hilarious because, for example, I don't know, like Elasticache, I was looking into it. As you read more and more about these cloud managed services, you will indefinitely read that they're an open source technology. So this kind of brings me back. It's like they're running open source, they're managing it, and they're charging you an arm and a leg for it. It's literally easier to run your own. And again, the automation sector and the open source sector of the industry has been working to make things easier over the last decade, 2 decades, really. Yeah. So your own is my answer. I think on-premise has its challenges because then you have to worry about the power, the recycling the hardware. So we're trying to facilitate the space by being kind of like your cloud off-prem environment where you're generally just worried about running things on your cloud. So we kind of provide the infrastructure, the servers, the uplink connectivity, the power, all of those things.
So
But what you actually run is up to you.
So when you have for example, typical partner or customer who are interested in open metal, so you're saying, just give me the bare machine service and the connectivity, and we'll do it all of the external, from the external resources. How the implementation happens? If you could, just give some insights here.
Some users are like that. So the thing is, it depends on the product, obviously, of the company. So if they need to use bare metal or they want to deploy their own thing on their infrastructure, they take control. We drop in all the hardware in their private network. Everything is highly available, and they get on with it. And they, I don't know, we have a client that does OpenShift on bare metal. They want to run OpenShift on OpenShift. That's their business. Our job is to provide the infrastructure. In case of OpenStack, we run the deployment. We've already taken a year or two to figure out all the correct configurations and for kind of the best performance and dependability for OpenStack and Ceph. And so we run the deployment of OpenStack and Ceph and kind of hand it over. And then probably what you're asking about is what kind of like management you could expect. Well, what's the reality of how people experience any kind of level of support nowadays? Unless you're spending, I don't know, 5 million a month with Amazon, you probably don't even have a person to talk to. You just create support tickets. Realistically, you have to have a pretty big spend. That's obviously not the case with us, because in most cases, you can talk directly to the engineers like myself and ask questions about the infrastructure. How do I expand it? What's the best way to run something? There is a level of co-management. So most customers have said that they feel like we're part of their team. Yes, we are. We're trying to make sure your infrastructure runs perfectly. So, and as long as that is facilitated, they feel confident in running their service or product on the infrastructure. But there is always a different, chain of communication. You've talked to us. We've got a Slack. You don't have a Slack with AWS, man.
I
Like,
didn't
how
know
much
it.
would you need
Didn't
to
know it.
spend to have a
Yeah,
channel directly to engineers of AWS?
yeah, we have a Slack, guys. So it's, and this is the beauty of working with the great teams, smart engineers, and they have this connection and changing the energy in a Slack, messages. So that's why I'm seeking for this kind of the cooperation as a stalwart, because it's giving us the advantage against. I'm not saying that the biggest are the worst. The biggest gives you this uh, security layer, because nobody will ask you why you chose AWS. But if everything goes, the spendings are going up, then this question
Yeah,
will automatically come back, and then the people have a problem. Yes, because
that's
this is how the biggest players works today. So they consolidated, they don't give us space, and they trying to put you out of the position that it will be hard even to go out. So we know that there is a movement of the multi-cloud, but in the end, I didn't met a company which is actually 100% satisfied of going only into the public. I know many customers who are satisfied to build in a proper hybrid way. But in most cases, everybody knows that going into the public means a lots of money, and we are in 2024 that we already know it, so we don't need to guessing. We know that
okay.
just all put all everything or migration into the other data center, it will cost you not only double but even triple, 10 times more.
It's probably connected to some kind of global inflation, but the prices historically have never gone down, which is interesting because the entire point of technology is to reduce the unit economics. Like, it has to be cheaper per unit, right? That's why people buy in volume. But no, prices have been, steadily going up. Uh, the other thing is kind of to infer previously to like the tipping point is that if you're a large company, and we've seen these because we've quoted some of these public cloud bills, what we've seen is you cut your spend by 50% most of the time out of the gate. Like, that's crazy. So if you're spending, 500K a month, going from 500K to 250 just to run your own, then it creates this situation where, is it worth to maybe hire a couple of engineers to run your cloud? Like, because financially it does. So we've got to get factual here. When people say, the cloud or the public cloud providers deliver a good service, is that true? Because a lot of people complain about outages or complain about performance issues within those types of topologies. Okay, maybe you have a good experience. I'm very happy if anybody's watching and you have a great cloud experience. Good for you. We've met a lot of people who don't. People who are frustrated with the weird billing systems that they have to hire another company to figure out how do we reduce our bill. There's over 1,000 lines in this bill. Like, s- the public clouds have created an interesting system of saying, if you're not pro cloud, you're moving backwards. I'm pro cloud. What is a cloud? A cloud is a what highly available. You can automate against it, easy to recover, easy to scale. It's not necessarily the big three. So this is the important part. Um,
But Mhm. But
that's not the
what
cloud.
we mentioned is that 20 years ago or 15 years ago, everybody was feel special because they invested in the virtualization. They did the VCP, all of the trainings. See, you know, the same approach, but with the different clothes. Yeah. So then we saw the same in the cloud. Yeah. I'm doing
Yeah.
Azure. I'm doing the Google. So they doing the same stuff, but they needed to to protect the. This is the part of the future. I don't want to underestimate the power of the public clouds and the services, but we know it that they are specialized for the specific type of the running infrastructure, not for all. And especially when we're talking about the monoliths or the, let's say, the old way how to build in the application, still the on-prem stack is the best choice. This is how I design the architecture. This is how I speak with the customer. So like the Pareto rule, like 80/20 in most cases is the best option, even from the DR perspective. I always recommend, because the store is also, we have the option working in a cloud, but in most cases we are not jumping and saying we are the cloud native, have a backup as a service solution. We believe that still your backup should be as close as your infrastructure as possible, because it's the time matters. You said about the latency, the networking, the efficiency and the speed of working, it matters. So on-prem gives you this, out of typical installation, but having the DR side, on having the additional workloads option to easily migrate in case you need it, like for the week or two when you have a Q4, you work in e-commerce. This is the beauty, that you can easily scale.
I think my take on-prem is that, especially post COVID, when a lot of the work is remote and a lot of development is remote, that's probably less significant than it used to be. So yeah, you used to have this like on-prem base. A lot of companies are now kind of remote only. But I will say this: I think the Chick-fil-A approach is pretty interesting, when you basically have, satellites within your offices or different premises. It may not just be one, and they plug into your own cloud. So that's the way I would see it. I would see it more, you should still be cloudified. And again, what is a cloud? I'm not specifically talking about, GCP, AWS, or Azure. Uh, so you should have these satellites, and these satellites should be able to do things. And then you should be mostly agnostic of location. So that is probably still very important. And
Mhm.
obviously, multi-cloud and hybrid are all the different approaches that people have solved, I guess, failure tolerance issues. Because on-prem has the same challenge as, I don't know, a data center that catches on fire. Like, the reality
So
is, for your backup solution, you probably want it off-prem, like realistically speaking.
yeah, yeah,
So
should do. So second copy at least, or the third one.
yeah, exactly.
So Yuri,
Um,
last question from my side. And I, many times asking my audience about it and guests. You know, so what's the future? Let's come back to the first sentence. We know what's going on right now. We know that this numbers of the monopoly will change. We don't know who will take the most advantage of these changes. But how you see the future in the virtualization world, like in the next 3-5 years from now.
if we look at who's currently using OpenStack, we notice a pattern. So, like, I'll name some names: American Airlines, Verizon, AT&T, uh, Line, Messenger, CERN, Bloomberg, Blizzard. These are really big companies. And so they were able to economically take the approach of running their own cloud because of their massive size, scale, and spend potential. They could invest millions of dollars up front to build out a cloud that would eventually save them millions of dollars in the back. The thing is, that's no longer the case. So, like with us, you can spin up your own OpenStack HA cloud, highly available, in like 45 seconds. If it's pre-warmed, if it's not pre-warmed, it takes an hour. Okay. And that's both for Ceph and OpenStack. And when we were exploring this topology, the market options about, I don't know, a year or two ago, the fastest quote we got was a 6-month build out. So now we're doing this in 45 seconds. So the thing is, those big companies that currently have their clouds, they had that edge. We're trying to make it so that the smaller and the medium-sized players have that edge too. So when I look at the fact, there is another aspect to this, and it is economical too. If you think from the perspective of these big cloud companies, they're interested in growing their revenue. So this is a purely business thing, right? And so let's talk about what generates them a lot of revenue. Well, really big entities who use the cloud generate a lot of revenue. Isn't a lot of Ukraine's core infrastructure is now in AWS, that's billions of dollars of cloud spend of people's money that AWS is now earning. That has the potential to really shift their revenue. Azure does a lot of government contracts. I mean, most government agencies that I know use Windows and Azure. And so that's again people's money. That's billions of dollars. Is your business that's spending 100K a month really that relevant to their growth of revenue? So are they going to hold users, you know, in their best interest of improving their services? Or should they lock down, I don't know, host the infrastructure of Brazil? I don't know. But the other one's a lot more money. So with that with that being said, I don't necessarily think that the environment is going to motivate really big cloud providers to work for normal businesses. So that's my concern, and that's why I think that why OpenStack has been growing. It's actually been speeding up in its growth and the amount of cores being ran and adoption overall, strictly because it is way more accessible now. You don't have to be a Blizzard to start with OpenStack. Most engineers really like the technology. They want, the idea of going to public cloud so you don't have to understand it. We like this stuff. We like virtualization. So I think having your own kind of platform infra team, most companies already have that anyway. And so being more accessible technologically, way cheaper. You don't have to have the upfront investment unless you're doing on premise. That's probably the pain point for on premise. You got to spend a bunch of money up front. It's more accessible than it's been before, and the public cloud is just going to keep getting more expensive. Historically, it has, and the performance isn't all that great. So I don't know. It's a lot to think about for a lot of different businesses and people. We just want to be part of the ecosystem. I strongly believe that OpenStack is probably a leader in the alternative space. I know Apache is doing Cloud Stack, so there's other players in the field, like Harvester is another one that does virtualization and containerization. But OpenStack's got thousands of developers, thousands of companies, and they're all pushing. They see something proprietary and they say, "Ooh, I like that. I want that," and they work to develop it, and then we get the benefit. You and I.
Thank you, Yuri. So Yuri Shyyan from the Open Metal. So if you would like to get more details regarding their services and how they specialize in the OpenStack infrastructure, this is what Yuri said. 2 years of figuring out the best scenario, not learning from scratch, but specializing how to build, the best way for the deployment and management. Use the OpenStack NSF. So feel free to just go on the Open Metal IO webpage, or just find Yuri through the LinkedIn, and feel free to catch him up. But he's really responsive. So if you will have any question, just put the comment, or if you are watching post after our live, do not hesitate to just leave a comment. We'll try to get the response in the ASAP mode. So Yuri, that was a great discussion. We are running out of time, so we had the people from the Asia. I saw from the Brazil, US, of course, Poland. They didn't have a choice to watch us. So thank you for that, and I will use the place to promote the next webinar that we will run. So you use the space for all of the audience. So if you could just show the slide. Oh, this is nice. You haven't seen, yeah?
Yeah. So anybody that's watching the webinar and interested in trying it out, we've got a little page for you.
So nice one. So so you can feel free use it. So just go on a webinar, or like I said, just go on a website. We also started our cooperation, so we are in a close relationship. So if you will look also the modern data protection, do not hesitate to contact Story Team. So you again, thanks a lot, friend. Have a great day, and looking for some sunny days and better weather in the next few months. No worries here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. If anybody disagrees, post a comment. Let's spark a LinkedIn fight. That's fine.
Yeah, this is a part of the
Well,
deal.
thanks for having
So
me. Yep,
have a good
absolutely.
day. Thank you for all of
You too.
for watching us, and see you on the next Backup Monster Show episodes. Bye bye.
Take care.